welcome back to my channel. I am Nur. Thank you so much for joining me in another video. So today I have a February wrap up for you guys. So for this month I have read 6 books. No, I have read 7 books, and I think that is the most amount of books that I have read by far. I am like so happy to have read 7 books. The first book that I read this month is Beautiful Disaster by Mcguire. This is a new age contemporary, and it's a story of this girl named Abby Abernethy, and she is this very decent, nice new girl, and she met this guy named Travis Maddox, who is this really bad boy with tattoos all over his body, and they had a bet. So if Abby loses this bet, then Abby has to go and stay in Travis' apartment for a month, and if Travis loses his bet, then he has to remain abstinent for a month. It is new age contemporary, so it's not something that I am very into, but I really enjoyed this book. I really enjoyed the relationship in this book. It's very nerve-wracking sometimes, and it's quite emotional. What I like about Abby's character is that she's very strong-headed, and she does what she does, and she's not all good girl, decent kind of person. She has her own history, her own background, and hence she is not all people think she is. However, I think the ending is a little bit not realistic for me. I didn't really enjoy the ending. It's very pretentious, very fake, so I had that problem. However, I do enjoy Mcguire's writing. There is a second book called Walking Disaster that is being written in the point of view of Travis. I don't think that I would be buying that book anytime soon because it's not a priority. I give this 3.5 out of 5 stars. If you like new age, if you like contemporary, then I highly recommend reading Beautiful Disaster. The next book that I went on reading is Dan Brown's Digital Fortress, and this is Dan Brown's first book that he has written, and it tells the story of this head cryptographer named Susan Fletcher, and she was being brought into work one Saturday because there is a problem in the NSA, and she had to figure out what the problem was. And at the same time, there is this guy who is the creator of this particular code named Ensai Tencado, and he died in Spain. And so it tells a story of how this cryptographer Susan tried to break the code that Ensai Tencado had made. I feel like this is not as good as the Da Vinci Code or any of the Robert Langdon series. If you have read it, you would see that there is a major difference in this book. I think that Dan Brown has improved so much as a writer, so when I read this I was really kind of disappointed because his writing was really choppy. The plot was really interesting. It's very intense, very absorbing, like it put you to your edge of your seat. However, there are certain parts when Dan Brown is explaining the terminologies, like what is cryptography or what is the NSA doing, or certain things that the public might not understand. It sounds very textbook like. So at one point of time the narration was okay, and then all of a sudden there's this chunk of explanation. I find that quite annoying. The characters though, I wasn't really keen so much on the characters. The characters seems very lost. Susan Fletcher, she's supposed to be the head cryptographer, but she doesn't even know what's going on. She's everywhere. However, I do really enjoy the plot. I give this 4 out of 5 stars. I highly recommend you guys reading Dan Brown. Although if you are studying out Dan Brown, I highly recommend the Da Vinci Code. But if you are interested on knowing how his first book is all about, then yeah, go ahead and try it. I think it's a biased thing. If you have read the Robert Langdon series, then you might not really enjoy this. Following on, I read Station 11 by Emily St. John Mandel. I have done a book review for this, so if you guys are interested, then I will link it down below and at the corner over here to watch my book review. This is a dystopian post-apocalypse story that is set in Earth. It tells the story of this pandemic breakout that happened on Earth, and everyone started dying very rapidly. hence the apocalypse happened. It started out with the night of the pandemic, where there is this famous actor named Arthur Leander who dies on the stage while he was acting out King Lear. Then there was this guy who is from the audience named Vigan who tried to save him, but unfortunately he couldn't, and Arthur died. And also at the same time there is Kristen, who is a child actress who is very close to Arthur. Throughout the story we could see the story of the three people intertwined and how they are related towards each other and how their lives have been affected by the pandemic. We could also see the story behind all these people, especially Arthur and Vigan. This book has a different timeline. It goes before and after the pandemic and also during the pandemic. I really love Emily's writing. She's really a good writer, very absorbing, very poetic, beautifully written. So if you guys are into dystopian and if you guys have watched the movie Contagion, then I highly recommend you guys trying this out. I give this book 5 out of 5 stars. Beautiful writing, beautiful story, beautiful piece of work. The following book that I read is A Farewell to Arms by Ernest Hemingway. So a little quick synopsis of this book. This is a story of Lieutenant Henry who volunteers for the war in Italy, and he is a volunteer doctor or volunteer in the medic line, and then at one point of time he got wounded, so he went to the hospital and there is a nurse that he met and he fell in love with this nurse and he decided that he doesn't want to be a part of the war. However, he has to, so he goes back to the war and he decides that this is not worth it, so he went to find his one true love, and that's how the story of him trying to escape the war and his relationship with his true love and also the relationship with his comrades. So when I got into this book, it was really hard for me to get into this book. I started out reading this in the beginning of the month, but 1/3 into the book I find it really hard to get into, so I took a break, went on to research on what is the book all about, and I found out that Ernest Hemingway was a volunteer during the World War I, and he volunteers as a medic in the war front, and this is really closely related to his experience as a volunteer medic. Also, Karen from Stacks and Shelves commented on my Goodreads and said that his writing is really minimalistic. So with that in mind, I went into this book and it felt so much better. Ernest Hemingway writes really simple, but he likes to beat around the bush. In his work, he kind of shows his thought process on what is going on at a particular scene or at a particular point of time. You have to have a lot of patience reading Ernest Hemingway or maybe A Farewell to Arms, because the thought process keeps on going and going and he really likes to beat around the bush. However, despite the whole narration, despite his very annoying writing, I really enjoyed this book. The story picks up in the middle of the book and we can see all the events that is going on during the war, and we get to have more conversations with his comrades, and at the same time when he decides to go back and find his one true love, we saw the progress of their relationship and how the book ended very ambiguously, and it's very, very sad. I really enjoyed this book. I give this book 4 out of 5 stars. I am proud of myself to say that I have read Ernest Hemingway. I am definitely going to try a lot more Ernest Hemingway now. So the next book that I read in this month will be a very short one. It is How a Ghastly Story Was Brought to Light by a Common or Garden Butcher's Dog, and this is by Johann Peter Hebel, and it is translated to English by John Hebert, and this is a couple of his short stories taken from the treasure chest. It is a short stories of German fables, German folklore, German tales. It's very interesting. I read this in a couple of days. Every story has some meaning and some lessons behind it. It's very good for all sort of ages. I think kids will enjoy this as much as adults would. I gave this 3.5 out of 5 stars. Really enjoy this. The next book I read is Wild by Cheryl Strait, and this is a biography of Cheryl Strait, who went on this backpacking trail across the Pacific Crest Trail. It tells the story of how when she was at 22 years old, her mother died. And after her mother passed away, her life wasn't the same. She was messed up. Her marriage was destroyed and she became really messed up. And at the same time, she wanted to find something that she could just break off from this messy part of her life. So she went on to this backpacking trail across the Pacific Crest Trail, and she had no experience, no prior training whatsoever. She only did like a couple of research and that's it. And so we can see her story of how she goes through this Pacific Crest Trail and the people that she meets along the way and her experience while she was backpacking alone. And at the same time, we can also know her story of her family, how close she was with her mother, and it is a very empowering, inspirational book. I cried so many times while I was reading this, and I feel that having to admit that you are messed up and to admit your weaknesses and to write a book about it is in itself a very empowering thing. I really enjoyed her story of her going through the Pacific Crest Trail. Absolutely empowering and inspiring to know that at a point of time she does it when not many women does it. So yeah, I really enjoyed this book. I give this 5 out of 5 stars. I highly recommend if you guys are into memoirs or backpacking. And the last book that I read was Underground Time by Delphine the Vigan, and this is her second translated work to English. The first one was No and Me, which I have read and really enjoyed, and this is being translated by George Miller. I really enjoyed Underground Time. It tells the story of these two people named Matilda and Tybalt, and they have been going and living through very mundane lives. Matilda is a mother with 3 kids and she goes through a very corporate lifestyle. She works in this very large multinational marketing company and she was enjoying her job. She was really passionate about her job until one day her boss decided to be an ass and decided to just pick on her and give her a very hard time, and from there it went down a downward spiral into her being very unhappy at work. And at the same time, we also see Tybalt, who is a paramedic, but he is very unhappy in his relationship and he was trying very hard to work his relationship and he couldn't at the end of the day, so he kind of just gave up. So this is a contemporary book, but it is not a love story at all. I was very surprised when I went into this thinking that it was a love story, but it wasn't. I read this and I was really heartbroken. We can see these two people having such a hard time in their life and they are the victim of bullying. One is being bullied by her boss in this corporate world and the other is being bullied by his girlfriend in his relationship. And no matter what, it doesn't matter what gender you are, it doesn't matter what you are working as, bully is bully and it's very apparent in work, it's very apparent in a relationship. So we can see the mundaneness of the society and how we go to work, clock in and clock out, and really not caring about other people and really every man to himself. This is a very interesting book. I highly recommend you guys, if you're trying out Delphine the Vigan, then I recommend you guys try out Underground Time. What's interesting is that it sets in Paris, but we all know that whenever we talk about Paris, it's associated with the city of love. But from here, we can see that it is not anything like the city of love. It is like any other society where people goes to work and think about work. You know, they are the victims of society. So I give this book 4.5 out of 5 stars. I highly recommend you guys check this out if you are into contemporary, and if you guys want to read more translated works, then I highly recommend you guys try this out. These are the 7 books that I've read this month. Lots of different genres, and I'm quite proud of myself for reading all of these books. Tell me in the comments down below if you have read any of these books and what you thought about them, and also what are the books that you have read this month and was it a good reading month for you guys. Also, thumbs up my video if you have enjoyed watching this, and also subscribe to my channel if you want to watch more book related content from me. Until then, I'll see you guys in my next video. Chill out! My face is looking super orange. Okay.